I hand it to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Arturo. So as we go through the rest of the presentation, we're going to be looking at some of the growth opportunities right now in the automation and robotics space, and what that means practically, and sort of addressing how Epicor Kinetic and ERP systems can enhance your business through that process and essentially partner with you. And so we're talking pre-AI, right? So we'll call this EI, right? Enhanced intelligence. But the existing systems within the software that already can help you streamline your business. So we'll look at those industry trends and challenges, and just talk in general. What is enterprise resource planning? Functionally, what does it do for the company? So what is it? And then most importantly, what does that mean for you? What's the role of that platform inside your business as you go through your own digital transformation? And then finally, at the end, we'll open up for questions and address those as we can. So to get started, I'd like you to think about three numbers that I think about quite a bit. 75.7. That's actually the percentage of leaders in the manufacturing space who see staff shortfalls as a significant challenge. 750,000, big number, right? 750,000. Today, that is the number of jobs that are not filled in the manufacturing space. And so this is part of your opportunity in robotics, right? So as general manufacturers need to find ways of working and keeping productivity at a certain level with a shrinking pool of staff, that opens the doors for you for a big boom time that we'll talk about. At the same time, it's a challenge for you because you're also a manufacturer. And so you're facing some of those same challenges, and in fact, starting to compete with your customers for advanced, skilled, high-tech workers and knowledgeable support staff, the intelligence workers running the backside of the business. 2.1 million, an even bigger number, 3 times the size. That's actually the predicted shortfall of employees in the manufacturing space by 2030, right? 7 years from now, we're looking at a completely changed environment for people who build. And this number is particularly specific to the United States, but this is all part of international demographic trends. It's happening in Germany, it's happening in Japan, all over the world. We have aging populations that are retiring out of the workforce, and then all the challenges and changes that happened during COVID have had an impact. There's just a lot of factors that are shrinking the pool of qualified workers in manufacturing. And again, huge opportunity for the industry. But at the same time, you're victim of your own opportunity, if that makes sense, as those factors apply to your businesses as well. And so overall, I'd like those numbers to kind of frame the conversation. To some extent, when we talk about how an ERP system can help you run your business, help you grow through these opportunities, it's a human resources issue. But grow you will, right? And so in a lot of industries, a 67% annual growth rate, that's actually a 5 or 10 year business plan for a lot of businesses. But at least in the 2020 to 2021, that's what happened in the robotics space, right? A 67% increase in robot orders. And interestingly, this was a shift away from massive corporate orders that you see in the automotive industry, right? So that's a shift away from big 5 or 10 year projects to a whole bunch of smaller projects. And you look at like metal industry orders, you're talking about steel fabricators, extruders, et cetera, people who are bringing in 1 or 2 robots at a time to kind of help their business out. And the shift is leading to what I'm calling the Amazonification of the market space, right? So when a traditional company goes and sells on Amazon, it changes the dynamic of their business. They no longer have a handful of customers. They have thousands or millions of customers, right? All sorts of small transactions, higher volume transactions, sometimes less profitable transactions, but it changes the nature of the way they do business, which leads to problems with growth. Particularly with serving automation needs and robotic needs of manufacturers, you're seeing the shift toward more customers with smaller accounts, people bringing in a couple machines at a time. And it really is putting a strain on your ability to support those customers, right? Just in terms of communication, when your sales team and your engineers and your quality department and your designers and your integrators are used to working with 5 accounts at a time, and that shifts to 20 accounts at a time, how do you support that effort? And what can be taken away or streamlined to free up your best talent to do the most important activities rather than being tied to a desk or stuck behind repetitive activities. So in the middle of the biggest boom that many industries would ever see, we have these staffing shortages, right? And all of that comes together to represent a major issue and challenge. Add to that the supply chain challenges that Arturo was talking about, and we're really looking at massive problems that need to be overcome in order to take advantage of massive opportunities. And I think it's a little bit ironic that as your industry gears up to help other manufacturers so that they can perform better in the supply chain, you yourselves become victims to that supply chain as your suppliers have labor shortage, and as you start competing for some of those same important resources. Lots of people need PCBs, and so that means that until you're in a position of dominance, in your space, you're competing with everyone else for those same things. And so managing the supply chain and having a system to support you with that and give you the flexibility to adapt when there are changes becomes very important. And then overall, when we're kind of concluding, looking at the barriers to growing in the middle of this opportunity time, even though there's a shift to smaller projects, these are not necessarily simpler, right? So you're working with customers who have multiple systems. Maybe they've got multiple machines that have been installed over a period of time. You're trying to integrate on top of other systems with outdated communication. So it strips away the ability to have sort of turnkey systems. You're working with duct taped solutions, right? Pieces pulled together, and having to create essentially a bespoke or one-off solution every time you talk to a new customer. All of this comes together, and we tie it back together with that question of how do we survive with fewer people, 2 million people disappearing from the industry in a couple of years. The only way to really do that is with technology combined with human intelligence and decision making. And so that's the enhanced intelligence of existing ERP systems. And as we look at the future of Epicor, and it's one of the reasons Encompass is so excited to work with Epicor, is they've always driven forward, and now they're bringing on artificial intelligence, and the things they'll be able to do with your data in the next 18 months are just mind-boggling to me. And it's really about evolution, right? And so one of my activities during the pandemic was getting into some archaeology. And what I think is interesting when you look at one of the earliest examples of scalability, building bigger pyramids, generation to generation, as they've done and they've dug up the worker villages that build these things, they find that the 4,000-year-old technology is pretty close to the technology from 5 years ago as far as a business plan to grow. As they needed to build a bigger pyramid, they needed more workers. And so if you look at the streets compared between two different sites, if you needed more workers, they just built more bread ovens, they built more breweries. And so the concept was that to grow, you just add a bigger team and pull in the resources you need to support that. But now we know for certain that we're having challenges in that area with staffing already. And we're seeing that as we move into the future, that choice of bringing in bigger teams, larger teams, is just not going to be there for us. So how do we overcome that? And really, we're talking about automation systems for the business, right? For your knowledge workers, for all of the support services. And that's what ERP systems are. So when we look at an ERP system, it's essentially a giant brain sitting in a cloud over top of all of your different disparate systems, allowing you to, or supporting you as you go through the life cycle of your project. So whether you're at the early stages of estimating and you need to have realistic dates that you can promise customers as you sign contracts and enter into agreements, or handling the thousands or millions of points of detail that you need to schedule a whole fleet of production at one time, all the way through the production process, and making sure materials are handled correctly and staff levels are correct, and you've got adequate machines and equipment to build what you need to build, all the way through to shipping, and then of course paying your bills along the way, getting checks from customers along the way. The ERP system is the integrated solution that touches all of those things. So essentially everything that's not the physical manufacturing itself or the engineering and invention side of what you do is governed through an ERP system. And you're looking at a pretty good return on investment most of the time as revenues increase through better efficiency, as you find ways of driving costs down. Ultimately, you're looking at improving your customer experience with that system at the core of your business, working as the brain of the operations, helping you plan and do all of the things that are necessary to run the business with fewer people, supported by technology. So I like to think of Epicor Kinetic, or the ERP system, that it is to robotics what robotics is to manufacturing. So when you go into a manufacturing company or a distributor and you're bringing solutions to them, you're helping them with their planning needs, automating physical processes so that they can get more stuff done. And that's what ERP systems do to you across multiple sectors of your business. The number one thing, or the number one motivation that most of my customers for over a dozen years, if you talk to them, their number one motivation in moving to an ERP system, and specifically with Epicor, is real-time capacity planning and scheduling. So when we think about all of the data that you would need to plan a week of your business, I mean, it would be hundreds of spreadsheets, charts, graphs, reports, etc., pulling all of that together into one thing so that you could plan out a month or 6 months or a year or 2 years worth of production. It's almost impossible. And the traditional approach in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s was to have a team of master schedulers and master planners, 3, 4, 5 different people organizing the business. And that talent pool is largely retired out. And so real-time capacity planning means that you can know exactly, predictively, when you'll be able to build and ship your product. And more importantly, as supply chain problems come up, equipment goes offline, staffing levels change, you can change and adapt that in many cases with the push of a button. And so rather than spending dozens of hours every week answering those questions, you allow the software to do it, and then you can make other decisions about the business. Supply chain management, at the beginning of the pandemic, one of my favorite customers, they make large industrial fans, called their supply chain manager and their buyer both quit. They didn't want to come in and commute to work at the beginning of the pandemic. And he, who is the production manager, was tasked with becoming the purchasing and supply chain manager as well. We worked together for about a month and a half, 2 months, cleaning up his data and making sure he understood how the ERP system worked. And he was able to automate the process of generating purchase orders to a daily task of about 15 minutes. He could walk in, click a button, 15 minutes later, all the POs for that day were emailed out. And the motivation there was understanding that making a PO is a real low-level skill. It's just data entry. Figuring out what needs to be ordered is a little bit more advanced as a skill set. But again, it's something that a software solution can give you the answer to. But actually working with supply chain, talking to vendors, finding other sources of material, making sure that you had duplicate supply chains, driving costs down, all of those high-level skills are really where most organizations want their supply chain team working and focused on. But I find that about 60% of most buyers' days are just spent answering the question, what do I need to buy today? So with ERP systems and Epicor Kinetic, I mean, that's essentially what you're talking about. And I think that's a great example of what the software can do for you across many different departments, right? Find those low-level skills that can be automated, automate them so your talented, experienced staff can focus on bigger, more important issues. Cost tracking is probably the second most important reason to most of my customers that drives them into an ERP system, particularly as you move from startup to an established business. A lot of organizations just don't have a realistic answer to what it costs to deliver their product to the marketplace. And by pulling all of that costing together through their ERP system, they're able to bid more competitively and more accurately, get more of the kinds of projects that they actually want. I think that as you watch Epicor grow over the next 18 months, moving into artificial intelligence, the analytical side is just going to be phenomenal. In talking with one of my colleagues is married to someone who works kind of a cutting edge AI developer, and his perspective is fascinating. He sees so many customers that have these massive warehouses of data that they haven't touched. They really don't know what to do with it, and that data is not doing anything to drive in decisions. Epicor has made a significant investment over the last 10 years, bringing business intelligence. So it's easy to get to. All of that data that should be driving decisions is presented in simple, easy to understand ways. And that process is only expanding as they start using artificial intelligence to do some of that analysis for us. So real-time accurate data, charts, graphs, dashboards, reports. There's a whole suite of key performance indicators for every level of the organization, absolutely updated as transactions happen, the KPIs updated, and that just helps people make better decisions. Inventory controls. So a couple of weeks ago, one of my customers called me. There's this little, I think of it as a dinky little module in the system. It just does a simple calculation and tells you how much of your inventory of your material should you have on hand based on usage and consumption. And I had talked to them at one point when they were implementing and said, call me in 3 to 6 months when you've got enough data and we'll put this in place. And they were so excited. They actually scheduled an hour and a half with me to sit down. They just wanted to show me the results. And the gentleman said, by having the system do that calculation for them, it's saving them an hour and a half a day. And he said it was about 8 hours a week. So basically 1 day per work week, about 50 days a year was given back to him. So he could use to focus on other things. And there's so many examples there, but being able to know exactly where your inventory is, not losing any time searching for things, and having a system prompt you to make sure that you're keeping reasonable stocking levels and that everything is tracked is a huge boon for most organizations. Quality and maintenance, obviously very significant. Epicor Kinetic has a 3-tiered approach to quality. If you just need a simple, hey, it passed or it failed, there's a kind of a basic level. There's an enhanced version that lets you introduce inspection plans and more supplier management, and then a fully integrated quality management system if you need that to work in aerospace and other industries. So a lot of support there, and then also the ability to track your equipment, make sure that all of your expensive, you also are using expensive equipment, even though you're building expensive equipment, to make sure your preventative maintenance plans are in place and that the system can predict and tell you when those preventative maintenance activities are going to happen. And then that can actually plug right back into the schedule. So your planners know that machine's going to be offline at a certain date, and the system schedules around that for you. So having all of those components together and talking to each other really makes for a more streamlined operation. And again, allowing a smaller team of people to accomplish more work and have better outcome and reports. And then finally, obviously, if you talk to a CFO or a controller, they would tell you that the most important thing in the system is the financial controls. Prior to moving into Epicor ERP, most of my customers have some version of a monthly financial close where the CFO and the controller spend an inordinate amount of time going through spreadsheets, figuring out what the costs were that month and how they want to post them, and doing manual postings to move all the money into the right reports for the books and ledgers. An ERP system actually handles that with each transaction. And so rather than closing the month out by doing a huge amount of manual work, which is error prone and time consuming, the system presents all of it to you. So the CFO and controller are in more of an analytical role, right? They're looking, they're reviewing, they're managing exceptions, and having more time to focus on the higher level financial plan of the business. So those are all things that come out of ERP, the ways that the system works for you. And essentially, again, having that extra brain there in the cloud helps significantly as you move through your digital transformation. Some of the tools that are there, Arturo's already addressed. And so overall, as we look at kind of wrapping up, we would like you to innovate, sell, and build, and let your ERP system and Epicor Kinetic help support you through those activities. As we wrap up here, we have a report that's available to you. You can scan the QR code here, or it'll be presented in the email if you want a copy of that sent, or if you'd like to schedule a time to sit down and talk with someone from our team. You can also get in touch with us at our website or emailing support at Encompass Inc. And I think that we have just a little bit of time for questions. Sorry, Arturo, I went a bit long.
Yeah, we do. We have lots of time here. So, and I see a couple that have come in. Can I throw them to you guys and you can take up?
Sounds good.
Hey, the first question that came in is, we're not really a large enterprise organization. Do you think that Epicor is suitable for smaller sized manufacturers?
Do you mind if I field that, Arturo?
Yeah, go for it. No, go for it.
Absolutely, Epicor is suitable. So I have implemented some very small companies with only 3 or 4 active users. We've supported quite a few startup companies where it's really their first foray into an ERP system. They may not even have product that's been delivered to the market yet. So everything from very small fabrication shops, again with 3 or 4 employees, up to 5, 7, 800 employee organizations. So absolutely, it's a very useful tool, and because it's a modular program, you can keep it as simple or as complex as you need.
That's awesome. This one kind of follows along in the same vein, so I'm going to pop it over to you, David, and you can continue on. But, if we're looking at Epicor, why would we use Encompass on top of Epicor?
Good question. That's a great question. First of all, I just want to say that Epicor has fostered a really wonderful community of partner companies like Encompass. And so you actually have lots of choices in the market. And then and some of these people are good friends of mine, and I help with their project and they help with mine. So just rest assured that there's a great community of people to support you, no matter who you work with. I obviously work at Encompass. 10 years ago, I decided that I was going to, I had a choice. I was working in the safety industry. I was their director of technical services and their ERP administrator. And so I had to choose whether I was going to focus and be a safety specialist or an ERP specialist. And I chose the software because I really like Epicor. And I specifically chose Encompass, and it was not convenient. There were 2 other partners, one of them within driving distance of my home, and another one, I'm on the West Coast in Portland, Oregon, so 2.5 hours away. I chose to work with Encompass for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's a small enough organization that it allows us to be very nimble and flexible. But at the same time, it's a very seasoned and experienced company. So when I look at the pool of operations consultants, I still feel like the junior on the team. Right, so several of my colleagues have worked with Encompass for 20 years and have been in the ERP industry for 30 or more. And so I came out of an environment where I had to teach myself everything. And I used to joke and say I didn't want to be the smart kid in class. I wanted to be the dumb kid in the group for a while. And that was kind of my experience with Encompass. Is it was just great working with such a team of people with such deep knowledge and experience.
Yeah,
so that would be it.
And from an Epicor perspective, we view our partners as part of our family. They are an extension of Epicor. They are closely tied. They're brought into all of our product development meetings. They have direct line access to all of our subject matter experts. So you get that expertise and you get that relationship, and then they have that additional focus on robotics and automation where they're really focusing their business and able to give you that experience and best practices and really focused attention. So that's outstanding. I have another one here, and this one I'm going to pop over to Arturo because it's talking a little bit about security, cybersecurity, and going to the cloud? And is Epicor prepared to deal with that? And how do you deal with that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Obviously, that's actually one of our core advantages, right, of moving to the cloud. One of the things that we found is when you're on-prem, you're managing your own security. You might, have a small security team or managing your own hardware. We scale, right, and so we have an entire team that's focused on that, right, on the cloud operations. But more importantly, we have things like SSO, IDP, and different offerings out of the box where you can actually manage that and not have to worry about all the overhead that comes with it. But actually, the advantage of moving to the cloud is that you don't have to worry about those things, right? And Epicor takes care of them for you. Now, obviously, another advantage is with the cloud, you constantly have access to the newest and greatest software, right? So whatever updates or new features, functionality, integrations that we might be rolling out to the market, when you're in the cloud, you can very easily take those on. Now, on the other side of that, we understand that running a manufacturing shop, you don't want to take features on all the time, right? So there's various options when it comes to our cloud. So, whether you're in GovCloud and need ITAR type of compliance, or, our public cloud instance or enterprise cloud instance, where you can actually flex and see, maybe delay upgrades, right? Or take one upgrade a year type thing. So there's various ways that we can adjust to your business needs, but absolutely, security is one of the big advantages of moving to the cloud.
Arturo, I would just add to that a number of my customers have government contracts and ITAR requirements, and Epicor has a separate government cloud as well. So if that's right. A need for you, that layer is also there, and it just makes it very flexible, especially as your business needs change. You land new contracts, they can migrate you over and handle that all immaculately.
Do we have any other questions? Does anybody else have anything they want to bring forward or, ask of Arturo or David while we have them on the line? I'm not seeing any other questions come in right now. Okay, well, we want to thank you for attending today. I think our moderator might be coming back in one last time, but thank you for attending, and we will be following up, and we'll make sure that you get access to the recording and to the slide deck so that you can look at it and review it, and also give you the ability to continue to ask questions and continue the conversation after the webinar.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
That wraps it up for us today. Thank you everyone for taking the time to join us for today's session. As a reminder, this session was recorded and you will receive a link to view it on demand and share with your colleagues via email. If you have any questions, please reach out to us at any time, or you can still enter them into the questions panel. I'm going to keep this open for a few more minutes and we will get back to you with answers shortly. I want to thank our panelists for a wonderful presentation today and the great information provided. Have a wonderful day, everyone.